On today's episode, we're talking about 5 magic tricks that you can easily do, plus why it's important to learn easy magic tricks. Let's jump into it. My name is Ryan Joyce.
And my name is Gramazing. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's Magicians Talking Magic. Ryan, before we dive into the topic of easy magic tricks that we can do to get an effective to-doozle or a shablasm, as we do, how about some news and updates?
Let's do it. I don't have too many. I've been one focus. Like I've been project to project. In the last month, I've been working on my local festival's largest festival, pardon me, and the content. It's all virtual this year, so I spent basically 6 weeks working on 7 feature pieces of content that went out and launched to their 30,000 plus fans and followers. It's really a large, massive festival. It's actually the second largest Scottish festival. That's with the only larger one being the one in Scotland. So very cool, very local pride. That's what's been keeping me beyond the chains. And this week is vacation mode for me. How about you?
For me, I took some days off because it was my, I had a birthday, as we talked about last week on the episode, and I took it Chillsville. You know what, to be honest, I did tons of magic research. I've been deep into magic research because magic is back. Shows, I'm getting booked again, which is weird. I don't know how I feel about it. I have actually been debating about possibly reaching out to Peter Menny, having Peter Menny on the show to see about, I know he's been performing in person, what you can
resorts. Yep.
He's been doing resorts and what you can and cannot do, you know?
Yes, that would be great insight. I mean, it's going to vary from, of course, location and region and area, but
personal comfort.
Also Greg Fruin has been open for a couple of weeks now as well, and he's I just chatted with him. Half capacity is what he has to deal with. So, certainly. It would be interesting to hear the remarks of what people think about this process. Like at this phase, what is it like to perform for an audience full of freshly out of their homes for 16 months? What's this like?
It's strange though, because I'm in the world right now of the mix and match of I'm doing a virtual show today as the podcast comes out today, and then I'll be doing 2 in-person shows next week. So it's the full mix and match, and it's weird to now start to think about your packages and the services that you offer with a virtual mix in there as well. It's so strange, but then also still thinking about one show will be close-up walk around. So how interactive do I want to be? How interactive do people want to be with me? What's the safest way to do this? And then I was asked to do a market festival, which I had to say no to because they actually wanted me tomorrow, and I just said I can't get my act together. I'm sorry, I'm not ready. But
there's a lot of moving parts.
But I said thank you for thinking of me. Please think of me for future events, and then suggested 2 performers, which is the way that if you feel pressure and you can't do something, always suggest someone else and say please think of me in the future, because that solves their problem still. You know what I mean? We've talked about
recommendations they come with a whole bunch of loaded guilt and responsibility. That person has to be just as good as you, so it certainly does open up. Anyways, that's what we could chat about. So let me ask you, do we just totally refresh, have you done a live show then of late? No, so that's going to be this week.
My first show will be August 26th, Thursday, August 26th at the Staircase Theater with Smooth Comedy at the Staircase Theater, and I'm really excited for that because I get to do.
Are you worried about stage rest? I cut you right off there. Are you worried about stage rest?
Yes, I didn't really think about it until recently that all my timing has been based on virtual, so I have no clue. Isn't it weird to think about how you were performing so much in person? You got used to dealing with people's reactions and and when you go virtual, you're kind of filling in the blanks the entire time.
This will be really interesting for all of us. Those listening will enjoy to hear your sort of play by play as we go, because I'm curious as well. I have not done an in-person show now in what would be without a doubt the longest stretch of time in my life, like uh, outside of high school, even then probably before that. This is so
This is the longest stretch for me too. Like doing any sort, it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre.
it would be interesting to hear your remarks about the show, and also what the audience, their expectation, alignment, all of that that's going on, those things that we face on stage.
We're concerned. Well, we're curious about the audience for this show too, because Staircase Theater used to be a very alternative comedy space where it'd be very, stupid, silly, really very deep slice of pizza humor things. But it seems to have changed into a horror VHS 80s rock and roll vegan style place. So we don't know. We're curious if it's still the same alt vibe that we're going to share, this weird, whimsical, humorous, smooth comedy. So we'll see. It's going to be a whole big learning experience, but I'm excited to share. I will tease my set, though, my idea, because I want to do a very little interaction with people. My idea is there's probably going to be a stool there. I'm just going to place very few props on the stool and essentially do nothing on one side of the stage, and someone will come up and experience all the magic over on the stool for kind of everybody. That's what my goal is.
Are you wearing a mask? Are you bringing up volunteers? Are you doing interaction? And the last question, is this the same venue like that I was at, the one downtown with the glass facade at the front, Hamilton? Is that the one?
This one is a tiny. I don't think you've been here before. This is first of all, I'm going to be wearing a lei and a coconut bra, and
yes, yep,
it's like a 60-seat black box theater, really tiny and snug.
Okay,
and I think the capacity is only half too. It'll be so many people.
Yes.
I'm curious also because it's a multi-performer show, so I'm interested.
Is the stool going to have to hold like hand sanitizer?
It'll be my stool.
Yeah, there it is. Yep. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Magicians Talking Magic. This is man, I'm really pumped to hear about your onstage experience. Have to admit, I've been reflecting on this personally. Like, if I had to go on stage tomorrow, what would that look like? And like, what would I do to prepare? And what would...
So you have a well-structured show that you did, and it was beat for beat, hit for hit, standing ovation at the end. Can you still do the same act? Do you think on the back of your hand? Is it no?
No, this is something, well, I mean, like, oh boy, this is a lot of reflecting in just the news. So I think this might be its own separate podcast episode. But I personally, as a person that's only done this for my entire life, 20 plus years, like, I realized like I never really had a chance in those 20 years to sort of step aside and look. My thoughts have been all magic and all on stage and all production illusion for so long. It's been hard to even take like just a breather and like absorb normalcy for a minute. So my perspective, like, I'm now looking at like content of the show, and I think, if I walked on stage tomorrow, would I resonate with all this stuff? And like, don't get me wrong, I could pull it off and do a great job with it. But like, is it what's currently inspiring me right now? And maybe has that misalignment been there for a couple of years? Yeah. I think that's kind of what COVID has brought to the surface for Joycey. But and that is exciting. And it's also there's negatives there as well, but as a whole, I'm looking forward to playing around with ideas and concepts and looking at that with the complete realization, like, this new material sucks. And that's what I feel like walking into COVID is going to be like. It's going to be like a whole show of new material for the first couple shows. We always said, and then we'll get on to the topic, which is a great topic, by the way. These are like really great, easy effects that you can wow people with. Kind of our go-to list and why it's important to have those. But anyways, I just think the first three shows are always sort of get that rust off. you know, and you can, each day has been feedback. Each show you understand a little bit more, and you get more in tune and in vibe, and then I feel prepared for that, but it is also exhausting. So that's my remarks. I doth ramble too much, methinks, but some of you might relate.
Let's dive into the topic of the week, easy magic to get a lot of wow, and why easy is important. So we talked about this before. Yeah, we talked about this as we do. We always build our notes, we jam on our notes, and we were talking about what would be 5 super easy peasy tricks that anyone could pick up and get tons of shablasm or to-doozle or wow from their magic. And the first one that we wrote down, I mean, this is a go-to. And this is up to debate, I think, to some magicians too. I've heard weird comments about this trick, but the invisible deck or the ultra mental deck is a killer magic effect. I don't know why some magicians are like, oh, you do the invisible deck? Everybody knows that. That is so far from the truth that everybody knows the invisible deck. Sure, it's kind of one of the it's a beginner magic trick or a trick that we experience first when we go to the magic store. I don't even actually think that's true for all magicians now these days either. I think that's maybe for our generation of learning magic. You know what I mean? There's such a different, like, I think Rubik's Cube magic or other magic attracts magicians now instead of things like, oh, the invisible deck or the pen through bill, you know? That actually, we didn't even put the pen through bill on this list.
No, what a good trick we could add to it.
But the invisible deck I've done on the news, I've done it at TEDx. I did it with WWF wrestler Psycho Sid Vicious and all elite wrestler Ethan Page. It's a no-fail trick, and it's also mind-blowing and virtual perfect.
Yeah, it really checks off a lot of boxes, doesn't it? It's certainly something that once you've learned it, you will use it for a lifetime. I will admit, I've never actually performed it. I have many of them up in the magic room, and just for no reason. I've never added it to the show. For no reason. It's a really fantastic piece of
we
magic.
Should jam on it. I feel like you would all of a sudden have a higher appreciation for it. While we're talking about invisible deck, I think we should highlight a couple resources too. Jay Sankey has a whole project on the invisible deck. He has some of the most creative ideas when it comes to the invisible deck. Recently, Craig Petty just came out with a whole new project. I haven't even checked this out yet, but he has an entire project embracing the concept invisible deck. And if you're familiar with Chris Rollins, he has a really great idea with this whole concept too. But the invisible deck, you can't go wrong with this trick.
It has to be said that, like, if you polled 100 magicians, that this particular piece of magic would probably be in over the 50% region. This would, without a doubt, in my opinion, be probably the most spotted trick. And there's a reason. It's solid. And we're going to talk about why those factors are important at the end of the episode. Really great piece of magic that you can do in close-up, you can do on stage, and you can do in virtual. So it really checks, as I said, all those boxes. I would say I'll add the next one, of course, is another one that a lot of magicians would remark, and that's the Svengali Deck. Probably the same scenario, would get written off slightly in its just in its simplicity, but the truth is it also checks all of the boxes we just talked about for stage, close-up, and virtual. It's super easy, and the audience's magical experience is awesome. They experience something that is remarkable. So magician wise, super simple, and a great one that every magician either has or at least knows about.
A Svengali deck is a really special thing too. I've been fooled by a Svengali deck without knowing it, and then afterwards, when you find out, you're like, it's just a Svengali deck, and that's a weird statement to say. You know what I mean? It's just a Svengali deck, but think of the power in that unique tool. Sometimes we forget, because we learned about the secret as a kid. Does that mean that secret everybody knows or it's too simple. I mean, just that's a, you know,
And I think at some point in the performance career of a magician, some of these simple effects become more of challenges. How can I present this and show my personality and my brand, I guess, in this? How would I do this? And that's something that, as we evolve, we certainly have those benchmarks. And some of these tricks would be good candidates for those.
number 3, we have Dr. Daly's Last Trick, which is, I remember, became super popular on David Blaine Street Magic, doing the like the 2-card monte in the hand with the aces. But it was it's a version of Dr. Daly's Last Trick, where essentially, say 2 black aces are placed in your hands, and then you have the 2 black aces, and they have the 2 red aces. Such a good trick. It's also the perfect trick to start learning sleight of hand if you want to start establishing sleight of hand. I remember the tricks when I first started learning sleights would have been like color monte. You get that packet trick from the shop, you know?
Yep.
And then Dr. Daly's Last Trick would be recommended, and it would probably come to you on a VHS tape at the time. Hey, check out Easy to Master Card Miracles because Dr. Daly's Last Trick is here, and it's a great way to start learning magic. And then Jeff at Browser's Den would show you or something.
I have to admit, I learned this trick and also the what would be the 21 card trick, but a weird version of that I've never really seen anywhere else. I saw 2 versions, and also this handling was completely different. I learned those very early on. Those were one of the first tricks I ever did. So this became total repertoire. This concept of like handing the spectator 2 cards, and boom, all of a sudden they without them even having any concept of what's coming ahead is wonderful. It's a moment that they turn them over and it's just over. It's wonderful. It's clean. It's easy. It's really great magic. And that's what this list is all about. Definitely a good list in our 5. The next one, of course, is a classic. And we didn't really prioritize these. We have to admit that just out front. We sort of, this Invisible Deck, of course, is right near the top, but all of these have very high ranking.
This one, okay, this one we put a special star beside because we all, I think, especially our Discord members, and if you haven't joined the Discord, join our Discord where we talk magic all the time. But Bewave by Max Maven, we have all discovered this past year through virtual magic, and I've always had this trick, and you talked about it too, because there's versions of the trick as well. And I first learned it as Twisted Sisters. This is how you learned it as well, right?
Yep.
Which is John Bannon's version with 2 packets.
Yep.
The Wave being the original version by Phil Goldstein, aka Kayfabe Max Maven. This is the perfect magic trick. We talked about Invisible Deck. Invisible Deck is a phenomenal magic trick, but imagine you could pack the Invisible Deck into just 4 playing cards that could fit in your wallet. You know, you can do this virtual. You can do it with big cards on stage. I've seen Lance Burton do this on the local news. I think this is his go-to local news trick when he does, and he has the jumbo wave. It is perfect. And if you want to learn the trick, Penguin Magic has a download with Max, 40 minutes in length, where he talks about all the reasons why you don't really do too much. And that's why it makes Bewave a perfect magic trick.
It really is spectacular, and I will only button it with a remark on the Lance Burton effect. I was at a private dinner with Lance Burton and a handful of other people, and his go-to trick that night was the sponge rabbits. I kid you not, and he just rocked it and nailed it. So anyways, a great piece of magic, but Wave is remarkable. What a great experience that audience member goes through. We've all been on the receiving end of that, and that's like really important. Just as an asterisk to this before we go to our last and final piece of magic, is like, it's really great to go through this list, because if you remember the time that you first experienced this, like that's what you got to remember when you're piecing your routines together. As magicians, as we evolve, we sort of forget there's that total disconnect on that audience experience side, and the more that you can have anchors in that reality, the better. Crazy Man's Handcuffs is our last and final of our official list. Before we jump into a couple other thoughts and ideas, this, of course, is diverts away from our card biased first heavy selection. But Crazy Man Handcuffs is an incredible piece of magic that's, elastics are kind of everywhere, and it's not uncommon for people to have them on their wrists and things. So really great piece of magic that's visual and crosses the boundary of what I like about it personally is that it's one of those evolving routines. So as you've seen it often perform, it starts in your hands first, so they experience what it is and they sort of more invested interest, and then once they're already hooked, you get to take it and do it on their fingers and just take the magic to a whole new level. So that is what makes this a particularly great routine for me. So love it. Great.
Crazy Man's Handcuffs is a phenomenal trick, and it surprised me. I was rocking it in the bars just before pandemic hit, and when you would do that to one of the barflies, or an older gentleman or something, someone that was maybe a little.
Is that a term? Is that a term?
A barfly? Yeah. So I said this to Alicia, and she didn't understand what it was either. Someone that hangs around by the bar all the time. Hopefully, none of them are listeners to this podcast or something. Anyhow, or like an older gentleman or woman or person that seems, I don't think this person's going to seem open to magic. But then you do something like Crazy Man's Handcuffs, and you make an elastic band melt through the elastic band they're holding onto, and they're just holding onto an elastic band feeling like a kid. It's an amazing thing to share. It's one of the, I think even for magicians that are maybe, pros, we forget about tricks like these too. Crazy Man's Handcuffs. These are perfect tricks for any scenario. And that's also, at a grocery store, talk about an impromptu scenario. Of course, elastic bands might be there. Hey, can I, not to be creepy, but say someone bumps into you. Do you have a trick? Yeah, let me elastic bands. Bam, bam, there you go.
And now all the rage, myself included, is to have long hair for the first time in my life. I've got hair elastics, man. So that would be a real tight Crazy Man handcuff, but it could possibly work. So some of us have actually got elastics all the time.
And if you dive through that elastic band magic realm, the elastic through thumb is the perfect addition to that as well.
Oh, isn't there a trillion moves and elastic stuff that one could learn? That's so true. Yes, there is a whole spawn of possible magic that could happen with elastics. Great point.
So while
it's not cards, so it's sort of like more off the cuff. Anyways, that's my little button there.
Yeah, so while coming up with this list, we came up with tons of ideas. So we wanted to share if there's new listeners, because we recognize that we have newcomers to magic that listen to our podcast. So we wanted to toss out keywords, kind of ideas that we came up with as well that we're not going to dive into too much. But say you wanted to Google or YouTube or search some things out. Here are some great things that you can search out. So a couple of things are the one ahead principle. This can be applied to a card trick. So actually the most common card trick that I teach my friends, like close friends, and I'm going to teach this on the podcast right now, I guess. We don't really reveal too many tricks on the podcast, but if someone's been listening this long, I think it's okay that we can do this.
Ta-da!
So you grab a deck of cards, you have someone mix it up, you glance the bottom card of the deck, you spread all the cards out on the table, keeping aware of where that bottom card stays. And then you ask your spectator to hand you whatever card you just glanced at. So say that bottom card was the Ace of Spades. You would say, can you hand me the Ace of Spades? They hand you a card and you would be, oh my gosh, I can't believe you got that correct. Can you hand me, and now you say the card that you're holding onto in your hand. Can you hand me, the Two of Spades? And then they hand you X card, right? And then you look at that card and then you say, I'm going to choose the last card. I'll go for it. I'm going to go for it. And you just saw the King of Spades. I'll go for the King of Spades. And you pick up that Ace of Spades, place it on the bottom, show the cards. One ahead principle. This can be applied to so many things. And I bet
and just to stretch the imagination to the other end, often frequently use this exact same principle in a trick might be known as mental epic. So don't forget, there's so many applications of this idea of you knowing something before the audience.
And I would bet that someone like Spidey or Jay Sankey would be great YouTube resources for that kind of experience of magic. The other great thing that a lot of magicians probably have seen, they might not know what it's called, is the flip stick move by
Yep.
David Williamson. Wow.
Pew, pew.
There you go. That's another thing that we should search out. French drop is a classic.
Yeah, these are those off the cuff moments, handing something to someone else on the offbeat. Boom, presto. Yep, definitely. And I would also add to that the retention vanish. If you were going to deliberately do a piece of magic in front of someone, I mean, thinking obviously a coin in this situation. Retention is amazing. It's that last, like they absolutely are convinced they see it right before the vanish. It's beautiful. So these are good utilities.
One that's not on here, but we talked about it too, is the fake take. I think Gregory Wilson talks about this. So kind of like, ooh, look, a container of peanuts. I'll take a peanut like this and I will place it in my hand and look, it's gone.
Beauty.
Look at that,
yes.
the fake take. Another great one is the stripper deck. Honorable mention to the stripper deck. Out to lunch. If you want to dive into mentalism, out to lunch is an incredible trick that you can carry in your pocket. You can also make it stage worthy too. The hot rod. So many versions of the hot rod. We talked about color monte and twisting the aces. Did you perform twisting the aces?
Absolutely. These are all great packet effects. I love that concept of just the simplicity of not 52 cards, just 4 kind of a thing. I love that. I love that.
Little packet magic.
This one was, I mean, without a doubt, we've all done this, and this is great when you're at a table situation. The salt shaker or like something through the table with a napkin, really great piece of magic that you can get from a normal situation that feels spontaneous.
And that one's exciting. So the old, look, I'm going to make the coin vanish, and you're covering it. Yes. You're putting a salt shaker or a cup, and you get a piece of newspaper, and you kind of cut. I learned this from Tony Hassini.
I'm Tony Hassini. The coin is the essential misdirection for the whole ruse, and that's what magic. As I think that's what a lot of magicians really appreciate about magic, is that like that little glitter of thought that really makes the execution brilliant.
I think it's the same reason as to why we all love a good mystery. The red herrings that throw us off, the convincing red herring that's diverting our attention and allowing us to misdirect the real trick. I think that's why most magicians love those, and most people love mystery stories. So should we dive into, as we close out this episode, kind of 3 reasons why easy is important when it comes to magic?
Yeah, as a person that spends time a lot on stage versus in a close-up environment, I would say that both situations increase anxiety, and anytime that you can focus entirely on the audience and not worry at all about the piece that you're presenting is a major win. And that's what's really super about learning these like just outstanding pieces of magic that are very easy to perform.
We kind of didn't really dive into it through each trick, but when we look at them, the invisible deck, the Svengali deck, Dr. Daly's last trick, the wave, Crazy Man's handcuffs, they all rely on the presentation to help make them impactful. It's so important to add the storytelling to it, and these tricks at their core are all pretty simple routines. It's not, we talked about this, like some people might say simple trick is sponge balls, linking rings. Those are routines that you have to learn and choreograph, and it might take a little bit of time. Whereas these are kind of jump, start, and go. However, you have to appreciate and focus on the presentation, the story, and the pattern.
It's so true. And doing all of that will help increase your confidence by reducing all of those obstacles in your way. It'll help increase your confidence, which builds to the final point here, and that is it'll help increase your flight time, is what I've always referred to this as. And that's just your time on stage, your time in front of an audience. If you have less resistance to present a trick, you'll do it more frequently. And the more frequently you do it, the better you get. There's just no question or way around that. And that is our goal here, is to help you find a way that you can present those pieces of magic easily and effortlessly. You've got what were you going to jump in with?
I just wanted to talk about magic confidence for a second and how you build it up slowly, right? I mean, first you do a double lift, and then place a card in someone's hand and it's changed. Dr. Daly's last trick. And you're like, oh, I did it. Wow, cool. Okay. And then you maybe attempt a pass or a palm, something a little bit more daring. You get caught. Okay, cool. Try it again.
I'm a nerd for sleeving. I gotta be honest.
See?
I love sleeving. Sleeving pens was one of the first things that Boy Scouts is when I started to perform that, and that was manipulation routine with balls and anyways.
But isn't it like
really
that
great.
First time you do it, right? It's exciting that you pulled it off, and you probably portray a little guilt because you just did something sneaky, And that's what
that's part of magic for sure.
But that's what magic confidence is when you build up your confidence performance, is that you can drift over that magical moment like it was just casual and nothing happened just now.
Yeah, because the first time is like, oh, wow, I actually did it. That's the first performance.
Remember doing Salt Shaker through table the first few times and everyone seeing your body like...
Right, telegraph the whole thing. Yes.
You have to just get confident in the fact that you're about to drop an entire solid object on your crotch and just let it happen.
These are fantastic plugs for our last episode about how to practice magic. And the only way to really break through that is to watch yourself with a video camera because you can't blink. That's great. Great plug for last week's episode.
That's awesome.
Man, this is a fantastic list of effects, and I'm certain the listeners will have their own ideas and their own suggestions for tricks. Where is it that they should tell us about those?
Oh my goodness. If you want to reach out and tell us about your trick list and what would be an easy suggestion, I feel like our Discord server is the best place to do that. If you want to join the Discord, continue to talk magic with us, that link is in the description below. Plus, we have things like the book club, which, by the way, we rain delayed the recording because breaking news. So you can still get in on it because a lot of us were on vacation. Okay, breaking news. Deal with it. That's fine. But we're gonna but we have so many episodes in store. I am recording a couple interviews later this week, and I'm really excited to be releasing those later. We have a whole lot of exciting new things happening at Magicians Talking Magic. Plus, if you want to support us, a great way to do that right now is you can buy our merchandise. Shablazm to-doozle. We got t-shirts and stickers and pins. But Joyce, this has been great catching up with you.
So great, and lots of great magic discussed here on a Magicians Talking Magic, because that's what we do. My name is Ryan Joyce.
My name is Grimazing.
Shablazm
to-doozle.
One of these days, I'm going to say to-doozle.
And then shabloozle.